Remember how broken clocks can be correct twice a day? Well, a broken band can still crank out a good song or two. It's totally possible. And this is the second time we're proving it with 10 good songs by bad bands. It's been several years since the original video, and more than enough time has passed to find 10 more examples of bands not worth listening to making a song worth listening to. I don't know if that makes sense. Just like last time, keep in mind that this video is just one person's opinion. Don't take it too seriously. Also, no repeat bands from last video. This is a fresh 10. You can check out the previous video in the video description below. YouTube will not allow long clips, but you can check out the full songs in the description. Finally, this is not a top 10, no rankings, just a list.
This video is sponsored by Factor. One of the biggest issues with eating healthy is how long it takes to prep and keep up with healthy ingredients when most of us don't have enough time during the day. Factor makes it possible. Shipped to your door in safe packaging, Factor eliminates prep time and all the effort spent in the kitchen, along with saving time of cleaning up the mess after. On top of that, the food tastes great. Speaking from personal experience, Factor has helped greatly with healthy options that are faster than any fast food or delivery, as well as being an easy option for food that you actually want to eat. It's only 2 minutes to heat and it tastes great. Meal plans range from 4 to 18 weeks, and you can add or reduce the number depending on your specific needs. You can easily modify food preferences, customize your choices, and skip a week if needed. This way, you can use Factor at your own pace without worrying about unexpected orders. New subscribers can get a huge discount to kickstart your Factor experience as well. Get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life using my link in the video description. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone to get your eating habits back on track with Factor.
You know how these videos work. Let's talk about some good songs that somehow came from not so good bands. Well over 20 years ago came one of the seldom few good tracks by Puddle of Mudd, and despite the lack of singing talent from Wes Scantlin, Blurry stands out well. Not just among the trash album it's on, or the Puddle of Mudd branded discography, but Blurry stands out well against all rock at that time. Think back to the early 2000s and try to come up with songs that sounded like Blurry. I mean, other Puddle of Mudd songs don't even sound like it, especially in terms of quality. Blurry is a Puddle of Mudd song you would not be embarrassed if caught listening to. The harmonic guitar notes are great. There are resonating lyric hooks that are instantly memorable. The chorus is big and swelling, and the song doesn't sound forced or gross. And during that time frame, it held up well against a bunch of post-grunge cheese. Blurry doesn't sound adolescent either, which is a flaw of many of the Muddy Puddle Boys songs. I don't even love this song, but when compared to the years of terrible groaning and bland lyrics, Blurry is a masterpiece. Wes should be proud that he's remembered for something good alongside the embarrassing meltdowns and bad covers. Some think I pick on the guys from AJR when I've talked about how rough I think the music is, but AJR is a situation where it's not personal. I'm sure those brothers are nice guys, it's just the music is awful. Then comes the dumb song, and somehow the music is better as they lean into all being dumb. It kind of worked. Well, it's the best compared to every other AJR song, which is a low bar of obnoxious Nickelodeon tracks, but the dumb song actually does things. It goes from a group with little artistic merit and talent, but some good efforts. It goes to better music with lyrics that reflect the sound. It's the dumb song. The track is not obnoxious. There is the slightest ska flair. The vocals are not whiny, and the best part is the lyrics actually play around with understanding how dumb you are. I don't care if it was intentional, self-aware, or they were just trying their best and stumbled into success, but this one is by no means awful. But I probably mess it up. I might be stretching it by saying this is a good song, but by AJR's own standard of quality, even with the fairly dumb writing on the dumb song, wait, was that intentional or not? I would take this style of AJR over any other AJR song or album or live performance. Despite the many AC/DC cover songs that are hilariously bad and the long career proving how rough 6 Feet Under can be, there do exist a few good SFU songs from the early releases. And Human Target was the rare example that worked as a good death metal song and worked live despite Chris Barnes hamming it up. Barnes and whoever played with him definitely fell off over time. Maybe they were never that on, but Human Target was at least something to work with. This was also in the mid-90s, where a style like 6 Feet Under's was definitely not as accessible. There is a solid groove in Human Target, and Barnes actually tries to work with more than his Cookie Monster impression. Some of the riffs are killer, and in just over 3 minutes you get the intended adrenaline and intensity. 6 Feet Under never achieved more in terms of success or quality after the mid-90s, which is sad considering how many 6 Feet albums and cover albums there are. If anything, Human Target might have been the fluke, as after 1998 or so, it's hard to defend anything Barnes has put out. Do you remember the early 90s? The non-grunge or non-metal sounding 90s specifically. If you don't, I promise you it sounded exactly like Spin Doctors all the time. This might be a bitter breakup song, but it might be the most coherent Spin Doctors have ever been, and I stand by this as their shining example of competence. Even more so than Two Princes was shouting, "Go ahead now," every other line. Little Miss Can't Be Wrong has an identity in the lyrics while having some fun guitar and bass work. It's lively, has a bit of funk and jam session behind it at moments. This is a good representation of what the early 90s sounded like. I remember this song being in many 90s movies for years after Spin Doctors fell off too. Writing was a weakness for the group as well as understanding what their sound was, but the planets aligned at least once for this track about an awful woman and a man who's better off without her, or so he says. It's also wild how much the song was censored back in the day for radio play. Seriously, whoever this song is about must have really been rough to upset the poor upbeat Spin Doctors who always sounded happy. Some of you seeing this entry will throw a hissy fit saying, "Maroon 5 isn't a rock band and I'm too impatient to wait for an explanation, blah 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 blah." But way back in the early 2000s with the band's debut, there was an appropriate pop rock band that had a rock spirit, and they made a decent song. This love works on many levels, and when you pull a song like this and compare it to the past, 15 plus years of Maroon 5, this track is light years above everything else. Also, this is a track that makes you realize that old Adam really did have some personality. Not sure where that went, but he had it then. Go back and listen to it. There's a thick beat, creative riffs, and instrument work. Adam doesn't sound drenched in auto-tune, and it's not filled with forced lyrics trying to be cool. I'm sure I sound like a senile old man, but this song proves there was a time 20 years ago when Maroon 5 was not cringe. I know that's what you want me to do. And by that, I mean this love is good, and everything for the past few multiple albums over the many years have all sounded forced and pandering to top 40 radio. Also, lest we forget whatever that awful Super Bowl performance was. This love couldn't even save that. What is the most generic rock band you can think of? When that question gets asked, isn't it amazing that people don't go straight to Default? It's literally the name. Default, generic, Chad Kroeger supported bland. Which is wild because the song that made them famous is fine. Wasting My Time was everywhere for a short pocket of time. This was back when Nickelback still had popular band credit in the rock world, and they supported Default, or it worked out well for a good lead-off song to get attention at least. They are glorified one-hit wonders, but the one hit worked. Nothing else did though. Wasting My Time had a good post-grunge riff, which was a big selling point, and the big hook in the chorus stood out well. The band's vocalist Dallas Smith sounded best on a Default album here, but I think even he knew Default wasn't worth his time after a while and cleans up in country later on. It's hard to get riled up with a band like Default and music like Wasting My Time. There's no real identity or personality. The rest of that album, The Fallout, had no identity either. Literally nothing about this group stood out more than one song. Everyone, it's time we call it like it is. 30 Seconds to Mars is now listed as a bad band. I know that'll upset the longtime listeners who really grew up with the original stuff when the brothers were actually making music in a band, but when you go past The Kill and A Beautiful Lie, it's a slow downhill trend. It started in the 2010s when we noticed Jared was losing his edge both in performance and songwriting. A Beautiful Lie is a good album though, and The Kill is a great song. It still falls under this category though of a good song by a bad band, and I don't think there is an argument for 30 Seconds to Mars now. If Jared and Shannon had half the passion and execution to write and play a song like The Kill now, who knows what we'd have? The bombastic chorus, the guitar work, the drums, it's all there and all sounds great almost 20 years later. So many good things about a song like this. And it feels like a lifetime ago considering the last 10 years worth of 30 Seconds to Mars music has been boring at best and ear-grating pop-produced beat boot music at worst. The trend will keep going downward also. Abandon all hope. In the many recycled themes and lyrics and even riffs from Godsmack over the decades, there was one song that stood alone. Oddly enough, it came originally off the Scorpion King soundtrack. I Stand Alone took the beloved isolation and anti-people topics that they pushed and made it go further to make a banner anthem for the group. It's wild how Godsmack got so much mileage out of songs revolving around "stay away, go away." But then you have a song like 2002's I Stand Alone that takes some of the same ideas but presents them in a different way, with much more effort, and it all worked well. The song helped the movie trailer and soundtrack stand out because of the big performance from Sulierna. The guitar work is not just one repeated riff, the chorus is loud and definitely defines that early 2000s hard rock attitude of, "I'm a tough guy, so you better watch out." This is Godsmack's best by far. It's almost as if a ghostwriter came in, understood what Godsmack is always going for in the previous material, and then wrote a song that was a touch more mature and not punch a hole in the wall angry. They should have used that ghostwriter more.
5 years since I've seen a face.
Remember Hinder? Yeah, hard not to chuckle a little at the thought of Lips of an Angel, but it was on that awful album Extreme Behavior, which really wasn't extreme at all. On that album was arguably the most well-written track Austin Winkler and company ever put out in Homecoming Queen. It also helps a ton that the rest of the band behind Winkler carries the load instrumentally. I'm not saying Austin ruins it completely with his vocals like most Hinder songs, but rather I'm saying the song is good enough to pass as something worth hearing, or at least not turning off right away. The entire concept is much more thought-provoking and less disgusting than Lips of an Angel also. A track about how much people can emphasize on a high school girl's looks, praising her endlessly, and then as soon as high school is over, the girl doesn't know where to go from there. And life turns bleak really quick. There's something to that thought of how much damage can be done to a young woman when they only are valued for their looks. Some people never grow out of that logic either. The fact that this song came from Hinder still blows my little mind too. Shock of all shocks happened for me a few years ago when endless attention-seeking transphobe Ronnie Radke wrote and performed with his fan Falling in Reverse a song that was not childish cringe. Popular Monster was the example that there is a musical talent and drive in a musician that is overshadowed by his Twitter account. When I made that Regretting the Past video on The Drug in Me Is You, I said that Popular Monster is better than the entire album The Drug in Me Is You, and I still stand by that. This song is the proof that Ronnie Radke and whoever is playing with him can put something solid out. From the gradual build-up and not letting the energy drop, better pacing than previous albums worth of songs, good beat and guitars, solid mixing, and a strong finish. It's not completely stock format either. It's also a topic that clearly is sincere and honest from him without just bragging or being desperate for attention. As a result, it sounds more mature and not whiny. Imagine that coming out of someone in their mid-30s. This sounds and feels like the apex of Falling in Reverse's talent, as well as showing that Radke can learn and improve on past material. That's a huge factor in the longevity of a musician, and in this one song, he proves he can build upon whatever came before Popular Monster. Falling in Reverse has put out trash since then, but that does not make Popular Monster bad. Radke, however, is a man-child who tries to argue with girls on TikTok while thinking he's accomplishing something, and then threatens to call his dad on people when he feels threatened. He's also openly transphobic, so you shouldn't care about Ronald the Clown. These songs are at least defendable when compared to the body of work that represents each band, and it's not that I think all of these bands are filled with bad people, I just can't think of any reason for me to ever willingly listen to them outside of maybe a song or two. And maybe in a year or so, I'll do a part 3. There are plenty of bad bands out there that can shoot for the moon and end up with something palatable. I'm not saying something great, but something you wouldn't mind hearing in a grocery store in the background. Grocery core is a good goal for some groups.